Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Byron, I'd like to start with you. You grew up in Ohio, in the industrial Midwest. Your parents both worked in the industry. They were members of unions. What do you think when you look at cities like Cleveland, like Pittsburgh, and what happened to the well-paying manufacturing jobs, that sustained families like yours, and how is that impacting families of color today?
So I'll start by saying, with me, I'm a product of a manufacturing household. So we had the opportunity to move from the inner city out to the suburbs because my parents had well-paying jobs. And it's really the reason why I had a chance to have a great education, and it's why I'm where I'm at today. What's happened over the years, and I'm a child of the 70s, so my first job was in robotics, but it was at a time when jobs were leaving the country, thousands at a time. And so I watched my parents, friends of my parents who were laid off, and what happened was now there's a gap. When I grew up, we were able to I was able to have a really great education, but the people that came after me, their parents weren't able to do the same types of things my parents were able to do for me. And so, now we have where I did better than my parents. I made more money, I had more opportunities. Now we're seeing the opposite effect, where a lot of parents, they can't afford to give their kids that same kind of head start. And so the kids are not doing as well as the parents.
Melanie, your nonprofit organization is trying to bring more diversity and inclusiveness to the Pittsburgh area by attracting, retaining, and elevating a diverse workforce. So how is this area doing? How successful have you been so far?
So let me sort of level set first. Okay. Where we are as a region relative to the top 100 metro regions around diversity is at the bottom.
How?
So we are underrepresented as it relates to people of color and to foreign-born individuals, immigrants in our community.
What explains that?
So I think a lot of that has to do with the downturn of the economy back in the 70s and 80s, the great migration of people, that is the movement of people in the US just moved right around Pittsburgh because there were no opportunities here. So people left in the thousands. At the height of the out-migration of people, there was a net leaving of like 50,000 people. So it has taken years to rebound the economy, bring the jobs back. In the meantime, we missed all of that growth. But now the economy is back. We have the jobs, but we have one of the oldest workforces in the nation and still a declining population, although the decline is shrinking. We have less of a decline than we used to have. So in order to grow a region, you have to have a strategy around attracting a diversity of people.
So as this change is occurring, is your job then getting easier or more difficult?
Actually, it is. I feel like we are beginning some momentum, but we can't relax. And this is I think the challenge, that momentum can sometimes breed a bit of laziness.
Complacency.
And complacency. And so it is time to really double down on our efforts regarding making sure that we are an attractive and welcoming place, which means then you have to be a place where people can grow vertically, laterally. They have to see Pittsburgh as a destination where they can advance.
Andre, you grew up right outside Pittsburgh in a little Wilkinsburg.
And graduated right down the street at Peabody High School, now the Obama School.
Good to be back home then, huh?
Always good to be home.
So you wrote a really cool op-ed in the New York Times that talked about the tech boom in Pittsburgh, but how some people are being left out. Tell us about that.
Yeah, technology can be used as a tool to bring people together. Clearly, technology connects us all, but it can also be used as a wedge to divide already segregated neighborhoods. The segregated lifestyles we lead day to day play themselves out in who we extend capital to and who we give opportunities to. And where I'm from in Wilkinsburg, when you say you're from Wilkinsburg, there is this assumption that you are not as valuable, you don't bring strength, you are violent. And that devaluation of black life in places like Homewood, Wilkinsburg, and the other majority black places is stifling and throttling economic growth in the region.
So you're seen as a liability to society and not an asset.
You know, in forthcoming research that we got coming out, and this is nationally and in each metro, we see that after controlling for education, crime, the household structures, that homes in majority black neighborhoods are devalued between 23 and 48% less than equivalent homes in white neighborhoods, robbing them of $140-something billion of assets. Those assets could have been used for business, for start a business, to send their kids to college. And it's not because of these assets are bad assets. It's because they're devalued. The same thing plays out in leadership, in education, in jobs, that we've got to open ourselves up to economic growth we all can have, but yet we devalue people because, and I'm clear about this, it pays for some to devalue others, but it hurts us collectively in the long run.
Byron, what is your organization? Yeah.
You can clap that up.
Byron, what is your organization doing, if anything, to address some of these issues that Andre raised?
So I'm glad you asked that, because I want to pick up on something that Andre mentioned, and that is tech can sometimes divide communities. So we're an organization that's funded by the federal government to advance technology, also to create more opportunities for people as those jobs become available through technology. So we're moving to Hazelwood Green. You know, we're going to do that mid-part of next year.
You're going to tell people what Hazelwood Green is.
Yeah, so Hazelwood Green is it's a 178-acre mixed-use development. It's one of the last places, if not the last places in Pittsburgh, where you have that kind of area to develop.
And you're one of the first tenants,
We're
right?
going to be the first tenant, along with Carnegie Mellon University. We're the first tenant. And it's really important to us to become good neighbors. And to your point, the area is a transitioning neighborhood, Hazelwood. And I'm not from Pittsburgh, so I'm just learning the different neighborhoods. But one of the first things, and we're looking at that now, we're still a ways from moving in, but we want to be a good neighbor. So we've already reached out to the community to find out, within our mission, what can we do to help? Because the last thing that we want to do is to show up in the neighborhood and be the shining beacon and really not pay attention to anybody or anything in that community. When we move in, we're part of that community, and we want to contribute to the community. So one of the things that we've done, we reached out to Tim Smith, who runs the Center of Life, and I see people shaking their heads, you must know Tim, to talk about what can we do, and we've already started to talk about not just what can we do to expose kids to some of the opportunities in advanced manufacturing, but how can we work with the families as a whole? And we think that has a lot of merit, and we want to really pursue that.
Melanie, what do you think? Projects like Hazelwood Green, how important can they be in helping these communities that have been struggling? And are there any cons to the pros?
So they can be tremendous assets. I've met with colleagues of Tim's as well and been to the center, and what they told me is they need jobs. So the family members of the children need opportunities to work in their neighborhood. And so the employers that are coming in can think about ways to actually employ the people that surround this development would be, huge. I think also thinking about mixed income housing, there are a number of ways in which people who come in and make an investment in their businesses can also make an investment in the community that have all kinds of ripple effects for everybody in that community. The downside is when that doesn't happen. And then they come in, they don't employ the people in that community, housing prices go up, rents go up, people can't afford to stay, they're pushed out, and so they don't get to take advantage of the rise of this community. Their own community they become displaced from their own community.
Now, you were telling me backstage this is starting to happen already. People are already seeing housing prices go up, and they're concerned.
In this neighborhood. So rents are up, housing prices are up, and even for the people that may own something here, they may not be able to pay the taxes on the property that they currently own, and so they can't afford to shop at the stores that are high income, attractive kinds of stores, and so we don't want that to happen here. One of the challenges, I think, with our transformation here in Pittsburgh, which has been unparalleled, I mean, truly the phoenix rising from the ashes, is to continue to leave behind people who waited for this rise to happen, and then they aren't able to really enjoy and take part in its rise.
You know, I just want to add to this. There's a promise in place-based strategies that's important. We do need to focus on neighborhoods. However, you have to invest in people first. If you don't invest in people, investment in place leads to displacement and other things. So
why aren't more businesses and nonprofits, foundations, universities investing in majority?
Yeah, that's the question, because
neighborhoods. I mean, like yours. But in the op-ed, I just felt the pain when I read about the community next door. It was East Liberty. And it's gotten, what, $900 million in financing since the 90s, and that in addition to tax credits and public funding. And Wilkinsburg's gotten...
Oh, I mean, a fraction.
Yeah.
And the
point right
is,
next door.
Right next door, but we invest in people we trust. We don't trust that black folk can grow from those investments. And we do know that there's only one way to grow, and that is to have deliberate investments in people. East Liberty, in this hotel that we're having this event in, just didn't happen. It happened because we trusted individuals. We trusted Carnegie Mellon. We trusted Pitt. The reality is we trusted people that didn't have deep ties to the black communities in Wilkinsburg and Beltsuver and Homewood. We need to find people that we trust who happen to be black, who happen to make money, but also have ties to black people so that those dollars can flow. Proximity is no guarantee for growth. You can be right next door. In fact, we have folks right across the street who do not know this is going on right now and would not know. But we've got to figure out ways to invest in people so that it can disperse to other folks.
Byron, go ahead.
And that actually starts with... And that starts with communication, right? So I always talk about being in the meeting before the meeting.
That's right.
That's where the decisions are made. And it's a burden and an opportunity for all of us to get out and get into those situations that maybe we're a little uncomfortable, but we're there and we're being heard. Mm-hmm. That's the most important thing we can do. You know, when you talk about trust in people, that begins with relationships. So it's very important for us to get out, talk to people, communicate, connect. One of the things that we really want to do when we move to Hazelwood is to be a connector and help connect the community and the people in the community to opportunities that they otherwise may not know about.
Melanie, before we go to the audience for questions, I'm wondering, can you look into a crystal ball, say 10 years down the road after Hazelwood Green is up and running and full and thriving and maybe other projects around the city, what does Pittsburgh's diversity look like?
So I have looked into that crystal ball, and the diversity of the region is growing. We're growing at about 2.24%. That is among people of color. That is on par with our benchmark regions. The problem is we're on par with our benchmark regions, and we're currently behind. So in order to get ahead and really sort of climb out of this last place position, we have to accelerate the growth of the diversity in our region and our workforce, which means then that the efforts that we're currently doing are actually not enough. We have to accelerate, add to, advance on our diversity and inclusion efforts in our workplaces, among leadership in our decision-making places. So it's not it's the individuals that are currently underrepresented at these decision-making tables. Yeah, we need to make our way to them, find out about them, but honestly, we often don't know they exist. So it is incumbent upon the owner and the people currently at the decision-making table to understand the cost of doing nothing, as Andre has talked about, and create and go out and make sure that our decision-making tables are represented with people from all different types of communities, of all different types of backgrounds. And if we do not do this as a region, we will feel the effects of that from an economic competitiveness standpoint. We sort of have to understand the case for this and its ultimate impact on our collective ability to grow and advance as a region. So that's my
Thanks,
thought.
Melanie. All right, and let's go to questions. And if you would, raise your hand, identify yourself. We have a lady right here. I'm sorry, we didn't hear you. Is the microphone on?
Sorry.
There we go. Thank you.
My name is Emily Brown. I'm from Fourth Economy Consulting. My question for the panelists is on the topic of opportunity zones and the potential for that federal program to funnel money into communities that have not seen it, and how communities can be at the table when these new investments are coming in.
So opportunity zones.
Opportunity zone, and I'll just go back to my earlier statement around place-based strategies. Opportunity zones, there's a tremendous opportunity, no pun intended. Billions will be poured into essentially properties all over the country. The problem is that many of those investments are already going on, and the way it's structured, that the folks who are currently investing will essentially reap more benefits from projects that are already non-inclusive. And we don't have enough diverse fund managers managing these funds. And so for me, opportunity zones, yes, and we have to wait for the regulations to come out, they can help improve communities. But we've seen from free market tax credits to empowerment zones in the past, or similar efforts in the past, we've seen how investments in places do not lead to investments in people. And I just don't think that we'll see the kind of regulations that will demand that investments will go to people, which is what we really do need.
Okay. Did either of you want to chime in, or are we going to go to the next question? Okay, and we have Run. There we go.
Hi, my name is Disha Filya, and I first want to thank the panelists for your candor in this conversation. But I want to know, why do you think it is that it's easier in conversations about diversity and inclusion to talk about gender and not race and other factors of diversity?
Well, okay, I'll start and then hand off. There are some demographic groups that are easier for people to talk about because they don't create the kind of pain, discomfort, difficulty for them. It is difficult for many people to talk about the issue of race. And a lot of times they want to pull away from it because it's difficult. They don't have a solution to it, afraid of failure, risky, I might offend, and then nothing gets done because we can't talk about it. We can't have the difficult conversation about it. That sort of visceral discomfort causes us to pull away from it and instead talk about some things that we're more comfortable talking about.
Byron?
One thing, so talking about race is becoming more and more complex. And I say that because when you look within, for instance, the African American community, we used to be, several decades ago, 4 or 5 decades ago, there wasn't that much diversity within, our group. But now it's become very complex because when you talk about issues like income inequality and the income gap, we have that within our community. So you have, some of us that are doing extremely well, and you've got others that are left behind. And that gap is growing every single day. And within that, you have all kinds of divisions and different perspectives. So talking about race, it's way more complicated than it used to be, and it's getting more complicated by the day. And it becomes more and more difficult to talk about because of
Fascinating point. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just add one thing. It's also clear that white women will leverage their race above their gender. I mean, you see that at the national level where people will vote with their racial politics and their whiteness above their gender. And many black women and black men just can't do that. And so the conversation around race is very much about black and brown issues, whereas a conversation about gender can be on many different fronts. But many people just don't want to entertain that conversation about race, many white folks, because it will compromise their power position in many areas.
Fascinating. All right, we have time for one final question. All right, here.
Yes, my name is Jasiri X from One Hood Media. I wanted to start, I live in this neighborhood, and I think like what happens when we see tech companies come into our neighborhood is a lot of times that means, particularly if you're black and poor, you have to move out. What we don't see is an actual door in how to gain entry into these jobs. We have a school to prison pipeline, but we don't have a school to technology pipeline, especially when you're talking about if you're coming into my community, it means I have to leave. So if you don't want me in your neighborhood, how then will I think that you will want me to actually be employed at your business? So what programs, are there programs, or what can we offer to actually build a school to technology pipeline, a pipeline where then, right now at One Hood Media, we have 5 students that are doing coding classes. So once these coding classes are completed and once they have their documents, then what's the next step? Do we walk to Google, or do we go to Google?
But there is this assumption in the question that we have got to go, we meaning black and brown people, have to go to Google. No, we can create things in Wilkinsburg. And I'm willing to work with the willing. And there are many black, brown, white folks who are ready to invest in companies that are diverse. And so I'm also just in a place that I'm not trying to fight with people who don't value black and brown folk anymore. I have to make a head case for diversity with people who simply don't believe it. I'm just done with it. I am interested in working with firms, government structures, individuals who are saying, hey, I believe in diversity. I believe in making money. Let's invest in you. And that's where we need to focus.
Byron?
So one of the things that's going on right now, when you look at manufacturing, there's a huge manufacturing workforce shortage. And that's helping to change some of those attitudes because even companies that are slow to change, economics are pushing them to change and to cast a wider net. Whereas just a few years ago, they may not have looked at community college students or looked at certain emphasized talent populations, women, minorities, the incarcerated, people transitioning. Now they're being forced to look because there's a shortage. And for people that are out there that are saying, you know what, I'm willing and able to learn new things, I want to investigate, I want to learn, I want to skill up, there are opportunities. It's up to us in positions that we can help create those pathways and make those connections to really clear the path for people to find those opportunities and have easier, less expensive pathways to get there. But there are opportunities out there, but you know, we need more connectors. But there are some tremendous things going on right now, driven by the economy, driven by the workforce shortage, that we should all be taking advantage of.
I'm so sorry to have to cut this passionate, important conversation off, but please join me in thanking Byron, Melanie, Andre. You guys were terrific, and thank you for your questions.